Welcome to Examining an Author's Writing, Part 2. Today we'll be examining connotative diction and rhetorical devices for their effect upon meaning, while we also take a look at Martin Luther King's "I've Been to the Mountaintop" speech and Winston Churchill's "We Will Fight" speech. Examining diction. Diction is word choice chosen specifically for the effect. Connotative diction. Connotative diction versus denotative diction. You can see in the graphic that connotative diction controls emotions, impressions, and associations by the choice of words. Denotative diction is simply the literal dictionary definition, and it's very concrete. Connotative diction contributes to the tone of an overall written piece. Tone is the expression of the author or the speaker's attitude toward the subject or toward the audience. The tone is the method or technique by which the author creates attitude. Recognizing tone. The tone is suggested without actually using the specific word within the text. You can see below there are examples of tone words. Screenshot this and put it into Notability in your notes. Mood. Mood is the feeling a piece of literature arouses in the reader. It's happy, sad, peaceful, etc. Mood is the overall feeling of the piece or passage. It could be called the author's emotional intellectual attitude towards the subject. Mood is often the reaction of the reader. You can see that there are positive mood words and there are negative mood words, but mood can go much further than there's positive and negative. Screenshot mood words and put them into Notability. So let's look at Martin Luther King's mountaintop speech. Screenshot this and also put it into your notes as an example. Martin Luther King writes, "Something is happening in Memphis. Something is happening in our world." That's a repetition at the beginning of a phrase or a clause that is called anaphora. Remember in our syntax discussion previously. And you know, if I were standing at the beginning of time, with the possibility of taking a kind of general and panoramic view of the whole of human history up to now, and the Almighty said to me, "Martin Luther King, which age would you like to live in?" This is called periodic sentence structure. Go back to your notes and see why it's periodic rather than convoluted, segregated, or any of the others suggested. Notice that the tone words in this piece are highlighted in pink. His tone is positive. He does talk about the human journey, although he uses dark dungeons and wilderness in several sections for the negative trials that mankind has faced. Continuing down, you'll see that he uses anaphora again, and when he begins the paragraphs with "I would." Additionally, he has allusions mentioned to the geographical place of Greece, to the Mount Olympus, which is a place in Greece, to actual historical figures, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Euripides, and Aristophanes, and the Parthenon is actually a place in Greece as well. Notice he also uses repetition at the end of the paragraph, but I wouldn't stop there. The end of the paragraph phrasing is called epistrophe. Take a screenshot of this section of the speech as well and enter it into Notability for your notes and discussion the next day in class. In this section of the piece, I believe that Martin Luther King is reminding the listeners or his audience of the great thinkers of the past and speakers and leaders who changed history. Why would he go back in time if God allowed him to? The work was done. But in 1966, there was still work to do. Look at the repetition at the bottom where he uses the word strange. the author's tone begins to shift. Look at all the negative connotation in words. He is wrestling with his decision to be where he is in that moment, and we see towards the end he is almost predicting his own death. Now let's examine Winston Churchill's speech. I have myself full confidence that if all do their duty, if nothing is neglected, and if the best arrangements are made, as they are being made, we shall prove ourselves once again able to defend our island home, to ride out the storm of war, and to outlive the menace of tyranny if necessary, for years, if necessary, alone. At any rate, that is what we are going to try to do. That is the resolve of His Majesty's government, every man of them. That is the will of Parliament and the nation. The British Empire and the French Republic, linked together in their cause and in their need, will defend to the death their native soil, aiding each other like good comrades to the utmost of their strength. Even though large tracts of Europe and many old and famous states have fallen, or may fall into the grip of the Gestapo and all the odious apparatus of Nazi rule, we shall not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender, and even if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle, until, in God's good time, the new world, with all its power and might, steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old. In this slide, I have written in the margins the syntax structure and some of the different devices that the author has used, or Churchill has used in his speech. The first sentence is what we call a cumulative syntax. There is a lot of parallelism within his writing. You will also notice that he lists things in threes, so we have tricolon examples. He uses anaphora. He uses anaphora in the beginning of each phrase, if necessary, and that is. He uses connotative diction when he is talking about the Nazi regime, the grip of the Gestapo, the odious apparatus of Nazi rule, and we shall not flag or fail. Churchill's speech analysis. Churchill emphasizes his points through parallel structure, anaphora, repetition, tricolon, and quadricolon syntax, periodic, cumulative, and convoluted syntax structures to create a rising tension, to delay the powerful point, to add weight to his message. It is powerful. It's an intentional use of language and structure of rhetoric to persuade and unite an entire country of people. The tone of this speech is one of honor, courage, resilience, and pride. You can determine this by the strong connotative diction. Prove ourselves, outlive, growing confidence, growing strength, whatever the cost, never surrender. These are connotative words. There is a wonderful juxtaposition of tyranny and those on the right side of history, those on the right side of God. Let's examine some rhetorical devices in figurative language. You should screenshot these as well and throw them into your notability. You should recognize most of these. You have been exposed to similes, metaphors, personification, allusions, and irony. Refer to this in your notes when you need help. You should also be familiar with hyperbole. Just a reminder, it is an exaggeration or overstatement. You should as well know imagery, repetition, and foreshadowing. You may not be as aware of oxymoron. Oxymoron is pointedly foolish, wherein an author groups apparently contradictory terms to suggest a paradox. They are usually two words or phrases side by side that are in exact opposition. Look at the examples. A jumbo shrimp, cruel kindness, quietly verbose. And a paradox. It's a complex idea, a statement that is self-contradictory or opposed to common sense, but upon closer inspection it contains a degree of truth or validity. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. An allegory uses characters and or story elements that symbolically represent an abstraction from the literal. It usually deals with moral truth or a generalization about human existence. And an analogy is a similarity or a comparison between two different things in a relationship or their relationship between them. An analogy explains something unfamiliar by associating it with something that is familiar. And an analogy is vivid, imaginative, and it's intellectually engaging. Screenshot this and add to your notes for reference. Symbolism or symbols generally represent themselves but also stand for something different. We can imagine symbolism as our United States flag. The flag represents freedom and courage and patriotism, but really it's a flag. There are different types of symbolism, and you can see them listed here. Screenshot and add to your notes. Lyrical quality and cadence. These are the song-like sounds and the rhythmic quality of words and language that an author chooses. Alliteration is the repetition of the initial consonant sound in a sentence. It's used for impact. It usually has harsh sounds that impact the senses, or soft, subtle sounds that support the tone of the text. In the example, you'll notice all of the M's that are used. Consonance is the repetition at close intervals of the final consonants of accented syllables or important words, especially at the end of words. Look at the S's in the example. An assonance is the resemblance or similarity in sound between vowels, followed by different consonants in two or more stressed syllables. Assonance often provides rhyme. You can see that the author's use of rhetorical devices creates a specific effect of tone, of mood, to develop character traits, to show irony, develop the theme, to help us understand the purpose, or to pull out the knowledge of the audience in reaction to the piece. We'll learn about pathos, ethos, and logos later in the semester. You can screenshot these and add them to your notes for reference later.